Welcome. Today we are going to be making a mask that you can use for today or you can use in the future for allergies. The materials that you will need will be 100% cotton, quilter's fabric preferably. You will use medium weight insulation or interfacing. You will also use flannel, or in the warmer weather you can use another layer of cotton. This particular mask measures out to be 9.5 inches in the width, where it is 6 inches in the length. When you are finished, it will look like this. It will have the actual mask. It will have two side pieces that are bias tape, and then it will have two ties, one on the top and one on the bottom. It will have pleats, and this will be the front face, and the flannel will be the back face. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As you've noticed, I have cut out my fabric already, and here are my layers. The first thing I need to do is iron my interfacing on my cotton. Iron it onto the cotton with the rough side or the bubble side down, and I always flip mine over to do my ironing. When I am finished ironing, we will then put our layers together. All right, you will notice that I have my interfacing placed on my actual fabric, and now I have my flannel, and I'm going to lay them on top of each other. You're going to have 3 different layers, and with those 3 different layers, you're going to now put in pleats. All 3 layers must be included. Now, we have our squared up very well, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it directly in half. That's going to be our center pleat. All right, and I'm just simply going to iron it. This is going to give your marker that you need. If you need to, you're more than welcome to put pins in, or you may mark it with an quilter's pen that will become invisible in time. Now that I have my first crease, I may create my second crease, and I will do so simply by folding it over. This will create my second pleat that I will be needing. I iron it, or you may pin it, or you may go ahead and you may use a marker. I will now fold over directly in the center, matching up that very first crease we put in for our very first pleat. I will go ahead and I will put in this one, and then we'll move on to sewing the actual pleats in. All right, we now have what looks like an accordion, so let's go ahead and get our pleats started, shall we? Now, it's up to you how you want to do this. I have my way of doing it, and it makes it easier on me. I have this nifty little tool that I use, and it's down 1/2 inch, my little marker. And so what I'm going to do is simply place it on my thread or my fabric, and then I'm going to pull over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew until I get to that half marker. Your option is that you can go ahead and put a mark on there, a pin on there, and I would bring it in a minimum of 1/8 inch whenever you're creating your seam. So I'm going to come over here to my actual machine, and I am using a standard Singer sewing machine. I'm bringing it into about 1/8 inch, placing my little mark, and I'm going to head and I'm going to sew my very first pleat in place. I backstitch over top of that pleat so it gives it a good secure. Then I will lift, pull it out, cut, and move on to my next pleat. Be sure to keep away all of the different pieces and parts, and I will go ahead and I will do the same thing with that center pleat. And backstitch, lift, and cut. And I will do my final one on this side. When you go to do the next side, you have to make sure that you make them level. They have to be straight across for the comfort, so that they may expand in that accordion fashion easily. That's why we put in the creases all the way across, so it's much easier for you to identify that you have everything in a straight line. All right, I finished my last pleat on this side, and you're going to notice, there it is, done, 1, 2, 3 pleats. Now with the pleats, they all have to be facing in the same direction. So I'm going to take one moment and I'm going to press my pleats in their full line across, and then I know I've got it and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead, got them laid flat. I'm going to take my iron and I am going to go ahead and I'm going to iron. Now it is good and flat. It is your choice if you want to sew an additional seam in here. A lot of times I do, and it makes it very easy to manage when you're putting your bias tape on the sides. I'm going to go ahead and give this a seam. And that stabilizes your pleats in place. Right. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and I'll be right back with you. I have put in all of my pleats and I gave them a secure stitch along the side, and now I'm going to add my bias tape to the actual side. The bias tape you can make on your own. You can make it a wide or a smaller width. Sometimes I do prefer the wide width, which is right here, and that is a 2.5 inch bias tape, or sometimes you can use the smaller one like I have right here, and that is a 1.5 inch bias tape. To make your own, you simply cut your strips, you fold it in half to press, you fold it in half again on each side, and press down so that you have your complete bias tape. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to place it on the actual side of my mask. Now you're going to notice that I do not have pins just yet, but I do recommend if you're new to this and working with bias tape that you actually use a pin to put it into place. This is a small bias tape, so you're going to have to do a tight seam for it. So there I have mine in place, and I know I'm in place because if I look at the back side, it's also nice and straight on the back side. So I'm going to come on over to my machine and I'm going to sew this very first line for you. I am using a 1/8 inch stitch. If you're using a standard center, then you may want to use a 1/4 inch stitch. It's wherever you can sew that best suits your machine. I'm going to back stitch to secure that seam, and then I'm going to remove it, and you're going to notice there is my seam. All right. If you do miss on the back side, just give it another sew, and you can do it again if you want to. All right, I'm going to trim off my edges to make sure everything is nice and tidy, because I do like my items tidy. And then I'm going to move over and I'm going to do the other side, and then I'm going to show you how to attach the top bias tape so that you may go ahead and tie it. Right? All right, I have both of my sides sewn and I have it trimmed across the top. Now when I trim mine across the top, I make sure that my flannel is indeed in line in the back, as well as the quilter is in, fabric is in line in the front. I do that so I make sure all pieces and parts of the layers get pulled up and inside of the bias. When I'm now pinning on the bias tape, I do pin mine, but I do not pin it on the previously sewn bias tape because it's really thick. And so I come to the centers areas and I pin inside of there. The actual bias tape, again, you can make it yourself or you can purchase it at a store. It's up to you. This particular one is the wide. You can also use the one that is not quite so wide, as I had showed earlier. But this particular one is 48 inches long. You can make them as small as 42. I don't recommend them any smaller than that because they do need to tie. From there, I'm going to fold it in half and I'm going to find the center of my bias tape, and I'm going to find the center of my mask. And you can simply fold it in half to find the center, or you can come over and you can find the center here using your actual mat for measuring. You pin the center of the bias tape and you pin the center of the mask, and then you can come to the sides and you can pin it here. So I'm going to show you in its entirety so you can see what I'm doing. I'm folding it in half. I'm giving it a little pin. That's my center. I'm going to fold my mask slightly in half, finding its center, and I'll give it a little pin. Then I will then put the two together, right there, pulling this one out, pulling that one and setting it in front. So your pin holes now can be your markers if you wanted them, or you can use a pencil or a pen, anything that will either wash out or fade away. You can also press it in with a crease or finger press it in as well. Notice I pin the center, I come over to the edge, I pin the edge, and I'm gathering all layers in my pinning. All right, so now I have both of my sides. They're ready to go. My top and my bottom are ready to go. And now I'm going to start sewing the actual bias on. Now, you're going to notice that I have pressed in a fold. Now, this fold will keep the raw edges away from the actual outside of the bias tape, snipping that off a little bit. And I include that when I'm sewing. So I'm going to come on over, and I tend to sew with the actual crease or opening towards my actual outside of my machine, or in other words, the throat of my machine. So I'm going to come over. Again, we're talking about 1/8 of an inch seam. You can go 1/4 of an inch. It depends on what you're comfortable with. But you have to catch all layers. When I sew that very first part, I then take it to the very end and I back stitch because I want that to stay secure. So I'll fold it again and go. There we go. Alrighty. Now I'm going to leave my needle in, and I'm going to lift the foot, and I'm going to pivot the actual fabric around. I keep all pieces and parts away because I don't want it caught up. And I begin to sew. Now when it comes to actually get to the mask, be sure you hold it steady, go a little slower, and pull those pins. I've been asked many times about, do I sew over pins, and I do not. I've broken too many needles. Now notice I have my fold again, and I'm going to go ahead and take it to the end. Lift the foot with the needle down. I'm going to lift the foot and pivot one more time. Lift, and there I have it. My very first side is done. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to sew this other side, and then I'll be back and we will conclude this particular video. All right, now you're going to notice that I have my entire mask completed. And if you look, here is my center. Here are my two side bias pieces, and here is my top and my bottom bias pieces as well. Now, one of the nice little things about the masks is that you can indeed reuse it. So a nice way to be able to reuse it and keep it clean at the same time is I will roll up my actual mask, and I have made a small little pouch here that I will be presenting a video for in the future, and I slide my mask right inside of this little pouch. Now I can either A, keep it in my purse, I can put it in my car, or if I need to, I can put it in the washing machine and wash it without fear of the ties getting wrapped around my clothes. I hope this video helped you, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.